What's up, guys? Welcome to our show all about that DM life. Here, me and my guests will discuss different topics that might come up while preparing and running your campaigns. From mechanics to communication, ethics, and frustrations, we'll give you our visions and experiences for possible solutions in just about an hour. Over these next few sessions, we will discuss the many different facets of combat, covering preparation, balance, rewards, and how to run it. This time, we will talk about running your combat encounters and keeping them fun and interesting, and how to deal with eventual common problems or disagreements. Joining me today, the master of games, player of none, Lucas. Welcome to the show. Repeat that again. You were still muted.
Oh, jeez. Well, you got that right. I'm not playing any games.
Oh, you're in one.
I'm in a game that doesn't get run.
Well, it sometimes does, but
sometimes it does.
It's sometimes.
Let's hope we can get back to it soon. But
yeah.
No. You picked the right guy for this part of the of the podcast. That's for sure.
Well, unfortunately, Max couldn't join us today, so we'll just do it with us two. But that will just be fine. Well, it will be interesting because we have different opinions on how to run combat and different experiences. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say.
Although I've never been in a combat of yours being run by you, at least.
That's true. That's true. That's true. Yeah, but we need to do a game where I run a session or sessions. I'm working on Call of Cthulhu. That's a different thing altogether. Maybe we'll talk about it as well sometime in the future. But to start off with, how do you let's just jump right into it. How do you handle the change from roleplay to combat? It can be quite jarring if you're not careful, and it does drag on a bit if you don't have anything planned or have a set routine you do. What's your routine when you start combat?
Well, first of all, it really depends on what they're fighting. If they're fighting something that's laid in ambush, which could be any natural creature, goblins lay in ambush. Like any creature can lay in ambush. In that case, there's not much of a transition. That's like, okay, you guys are role playing. Your role play conversation ends. Okay, as you guys are walking over the road, suddenly roll for initiative. You can also have where you do go from actual role play, like the opponent and the player characters interacting with each other, which turns into them fighting. Most of the time, it's initiated by the player, so you don't really have to worry about it.
I wanted to say that really depends, because I've mostly had just players be generally nice to NPCs. Maybe that's just the NPCs I run. It could also be the case. But But I've always found it difficult to change into combat if it does turn sour, because they usually try to get something else out of him, and I'm just like, nah, he's not going to accept this. He really is going to fight you guys. And then it starts kind of slowly. How do you handle that? Because I do have a set thing I do, but
well, if it goes from roleplay to combat, as I said, either of the players initiated, which is something that happens for me, but also it could come down to like a single persuasion roll or intimidation roll. That if that goes wrong, then it turns into a combat. But you can also have, like, if they're just going into a conversation and you decide, like, okay, no, this NPC is definitely going to fight the party.
Yeah.
They could like announce, like, oh, you've met your doom or whatnot, or prepare for battle, whatever. Like, they announce the fact, like, I'm gonna fucking kill you now. Totally valid reason to go from that, and then they're done talking, they're gonna kill you, and you're gonna have to fight your way out of it. As I said, 4 players attack it.
Yeah. So, which is also pretty often the case. The players just attack someone. Well, depends on the players, but
the players, they're the heroes from the story, right? So that means
Yeah.
that whenever there's something that is opposing them, which could be a straight up villain, um, that's like, I'm the evil bad guy, I'm gonna kill all these people, then your players will attack it.
Yeah.
If whatever the thing is sees itself as better than the players and talks down to them, which is what was very much the case with the Aboleth from the last session of
Mhm.
Unravel, where it was like, I am a god, you should bow before me, and then the players were like, nah, bitch, we're the heroes, and then they started attacking it.
Yeah.
So like you can lure out the combat a little bit
Yeah,
by the way
you can.
you role play your NPCs.
Of course, of course. But how what do you do? Because you have it a bit easier because you have already you already have the battle map set up. Normally,
Most of the time.
But what's your ritual routine?
From like just from a play, like a gameplay standpoint of going from role play
Yeah.
to
Well, what do you
I no yeah.
how do
Um
you handle that?
well I try to take as much time and from the moment that if I don't have the battle map prepared, like I got this box
Mm-hmm.
with me, like I got this briefcase full of like pockets with it, which is filled with 3D printed stuff, which I use for my battle maps. Um,
Yeah.
Either I have an idea of what I'm going for, or I'm just gonna have to throw stuff up very quickly, very randomly. If we start a session or after a break, we're going to go into a combat, then I have some time to actually prepare it out. Otherwise, I'm just going to go put it down as quickly as possible. And I start with okay, roll for initiative. Then I start building really quickly
Yeah.
until I'm done, and then the players are like, okay, I got this, and then they know what they have, and then hopefully I'm then done um with getting um my map set up, and then the player then I normally go like, okay, where are you guys at? Or either I know already where they are, or they can decide like, oh, I'm over here, I'm over there, I'm over there, I'm over
Mm-hmm.
there. You put down the players. After you put down the players, you put down the enemies in what spots they are. They If they were hiding, they might be behind bushes, behind rocks. If they were talking against them, sometimes it's very clear that like one character is strictly talking to the NPC, that means that they're probably 5 feet apart. Or if the NPC is up on a throne, like they're
Yeah.
probably down the
Yeah.
steps a little bit. So you can like kind of guess from the roleplay where the characters are.
Nope.
Then take the oh there you go.
There's one
Hey.
1 second.
No problem.
Well, let me just.
Come on.
We've got a Max.
We've
Hi,
got a
Max.
Max. Hello, Max. An unexpected guest has entered the fray. Welcome, brother.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
I heard Rebirth is nice this time of year, isn't it?
I haven't been there yet.
Well,
I should check it out. I've heard it's always nice.
yeah.
Anyway, go on with you.
We were talking about the routine you go through starting combat.
Yeah. My last step would be, after putting down the enemies, is take everybody's initiative. I stole this idea from Max, where you have like little cards that you can put over your DM screen. You put the initiative order up. In my case, from left to right. For you guys, it's always in the
Mhm.
other direction. And then you just go with the first turn. Normally, that's most likely a player. And then you just go like, what do you want to do?
Yeah. Well, Max, since you've joined us, why don't you tell us what your ritual or routine when switching from roleplay to combat, or just switching from just a game a standard scene to combat?
It's always a little awkward.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's the the silence before the storm, because a lot of people get like, are we supposed to roll? So I guess usually I start with everybody roll initiative. So that's the switch from combat to roleplay. And then it depends on the party how well that switch goes. But it's genuinely preparation helps with getting everything done. I have sometimes even tested rolling my initiative and writing everything down before certain encounters, and that works. But sometimes it's a random encounter and you can't do that.
Yeah.
So there's always that little awkward time where you have to write things down, and and do certain things, and I'd say let your players just talk to each other. Like,
yeah, what I've found
Hope
is
they do.
you hope they do, because otherwise they just stare at you for
yeah,
a few minutes while you're setting everything up. Just
I
putting
Oh
know.
yeah, they might also be very interested. Like, oh, where am I gonna be?
yeah.
I noticed with you as well, Lucas, that you sometimes just say, "You guys can talk. You don't have to."
Yeah. Well, it's because we're on stream. We're trying to entertain an audience. I'm
Yeah,
like, okay,
yeah.
you guys go ahead. I'm building like a tavern upper floor here. Give me a minute.
Everyone's like,
Sometimes it's just
"Should we
dead
talk?
quiet.
Should we talk?" No, it's in a normal home game. Usually people talk. I've noticed, but they do it whenever, even if you don't want them to. They also talk. So
Yeah.
in a speed game, there's a different energy. It's like, can we talk? Should we talk?
Yeah,
So-
it's also it also depends on the size of the group, because I've noticed the bigger the group, the more they
the
talk,
longer the combat.
and the longer the combat, of
Oh,
course.
true.
We're getting to that soon, so no worries. But if you're in a group with 3 or 2 players, then it's usually pretty quiet.
Unless you have 20 different enemies that have that are for initiative that takes super long to roll initiative for example, then it's like this long awkward pause.
You
Well,
need to
that's
build the map
where
and then
the
roll
problem-
initiative.
Yeah.
Probably don't want to have like. I mean, we've probably already talked about how you should probably group up certain enemies in.
Well, no,
Yeah.
good
You've
that
told
you
me
bring
many
it
a
up.
time.
Good that you bring it up, but because we're
Just
just getting to
spare
that. How do you speed up general combat? How do you
Well,
guys speed up?
A golden tip, if you don't do it already, if you're playing with actual dice and not a rolling room, roll your damage dice and your d20 at the same time, even if you miss. That
Yeah.
helps a lot, especially if the player's going to go, okay, I hit. Where's my d12? You know,
Which happens more often than
I've
not.
done this. Yeah, I've done this for a while in like a game that I ran before the live streams, and I'm pretty sure that Luke still does it now with Tyrus, that he always rolls a d8 and a d20 at the same time. That's
Yeah,
the
he
quickest
does,
way.
does.
I mean, that's the easiest tip to be like, okay, that's how combat gets quicker.
Well, that's how the rolling gets quicker, but you have more things you can keep in mind if you're speeding up general combat, like the initiative cards you said. Those are a golden tip. Just keep initiative on your screen, because you always know what the order is going to be, and the players also can just look at your DM screen or whatever and just know who's up next.
If you put the cards over and they can see like when it's their turn, you're never going to be like, you're not going to have the problem of like, hey, wasn't it my turn like before them? And it's
No,
like,
they'll
oh wait, yeah,
remind
that's
you.
before they went and they went. It's like that it's now your turn, and then immediately the player goes like, no, it's my turn, because they've been watching the wrong card the entire time.
Which makes that's just it's a little help to make sure that everything keeps in flow and you don't forget as DM. Your
Yeah.
players will remind you if you left one of them out, not if you left out an enemy.
Their turn
still.
is sacred for them.
Sometimes.
I mean, I always remind my DM if an enemy didn't act.
Yeah, no, if you as player notice, well, like,
I don't.
isn't that little guy supposed to do something? And the DM's like, oh yeah.
Yeah, thank
Right.
you. He casts fireball on you all.
I get that a lot when I miss something, like when I forget to do something. It's 9 times out of 10 it's Max that goes like, isn't
Yeah,
let's do something, and everybody else is like, oh god.
No, I try to keep track of it because I think it's only fair if certain enemies are there that they're doing something.
I mean, yeah, that's the idea of the. That's why you prepared an encounter, because you've balanced it in such a way, and for it to work in that way, everyone needs to act. Otherwise,
I would say though, if you're gonna be a player like that, don't argument about it. Just if the DM says no, just stop talking about it.
yeah.
Yeah,
I've noticed
the discussions
I've probably done it
take so
myself
long.
sometimes too. But there's people who go like in rule and they're like want to just keep going, but it's in the rules, and it's like, nah, it's not worth it.
Yeah, you have the power as DM to just say, nah, that ain't it, chief.
If you genuinely annoys your players, you should talk about it. But
oh, of course you can.
not during the game, I think.
You can
Like-
always look it up. I usually this is derailing from the subject, but it's fine. It belongs to the belongs
I
to
mean,
the
it's
topic.
it's quickening the combat. Like, don't argue about every
Yeah.
single rule. Sometimes you
True.
just have to state how you want to play it at that moment, and later on you can bring it back up, but not
True.
during the combat, because probably you and the DM are not the only person on that table.
Yeah.
There's probably another entire party who doesn't want this conversation. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, as DM, if someone just says no, that rule is not correct, I just usually look it up because I have the books with me, and I can say no, it's correct. Or just if I can't find it in a quick enough time, I'll just say no, I think that's correct, and just look it up later.
I have a lot with rules. I try to know most of my players' ability. I found out like I know enough to be able to decide like yes or no on how a certain thing works. Good example of that was it happened with the Shield Master feat in the last game of Unravel, where it was like, oh, I'm pretty sure the Shield Master feat can make me do this. I was like, no, it doesn't. And then I went on with the combat because I was sure that I got it right. And then you guys looked it up, and it was like, oh no, yeah, he's right.
Yeah, I was just
Like
curious.
as a DM, stick to your gut if you make a ruling. Don't change it, unless it's something very detrimental. Or like if you feel the need to look it up, then you might be able to change it. But if you're like, no, I'm going to speed up the combat. This thing doesn't matter that much. If you say no, then it isn't. If you say yes, then sure it did.
Yeah, same goes for roleplay. If someone just asks something and you say no, that you need to roll that skill, and they just start to argue about which skill it is, then just say no, that skill, roll it quickly, because otherwise it devolves into a discussion, which you don't want most of the time.
I mean, I would say if all your players tell you a certain thing, maybe you should start looking at it. Like,
of course.
But if it's just one player who tries to argue himself out of a shitty situation, you shouldn't.
I mean,
you should probably just be like.
I mean, if they say if they want to look up something, and I say roll a history check for me, and they say no, isn't you know what?
Wouldn't it be Arcana or something?
Wouldn't be nature or Arcana.
Yeah.
Then I will just think about it for a second, and then maybe roll that then for me, or otherwise just
you can consider it. Like maybe it's a religious check, and you're like, yeah, you're right. That could be a religious check.
Yeah, it could be. Doesn't always have to be, but.
Or you could say, well, you could make a religious check, but that would be different information that you might look for, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or higher DC, lower DC.
Yeah, stuff like exactly. You just make them.
Yeah. So how do you?
Another way to speed up combat, by the way, before we leave that topic, and it's something that you do a lot, Rick. Know the spell you're gonna cast before it's your turn.
Well, I think that's difficult as player because Well, I know what spells I want to cast, but sometimes the situation just changes the turn before you go, and then it's just like, well,
true.
And sometimes I just don't really know what I want to do in this situation. Like sometimes I don't really have many spell slots, and I want to save them, but I would like to do something else. But I could also do something else. I'm just thinking about it. While the others were going.
It's not necessarily using, but the indecisiveness of what spell am I going to cast is something that normally in every game takes a lot of time.
Yeah, you should really
do it with everything.
Yeah,
not only spells.
Even rogues.
If you're going to use a certain ability, know how it works.
That also helps.
Yeah,
know your class, but that's for players.
That's for players. But you
DMs as well.
It's even worse as a DM if you don't know certain things about your monster. You're like,
wait, can it kill can it disease a player? What?
Yeah.
Since when? Well, but you already pointed this out. Grouping your monsters. Max.
Yeah.
How do you do that? And how do you keep track then of monsters' health, abilities, where they are, position?
Well, ideally, I know the combat is coming, and I
Mhm.
make a sheet for myself with all the monsters and the HP, and then it's a lot of muscle memory. If you can't do that, whatever you're using, whatever miniatures you're using, you don't mind putting a little marker on them or something to remind this is that miniature. You can do that. I usually don't need it that much. And the things that I group together, my mentality is always if I make a little mistake, it doesn't matter that much.
Yeah.
Like they're so insignificant because I've grouped them together. They're usually minions. They're usually something that gets killed in 2 hits. If I feel like I think this guy was hit, but his HP is still at full, I'll just brush it over, and then sure he probably was damaged, and just give someone else the health bar he had, and then let him be one in.
Or just
If I
give.
feel like,
Yeah.
or if your players are like, wasn't he damaged and you didn't do that? You're like,
Well,
maybe I damaged the wrong one.
Maybe he was.
Yeah, and then you just go with it, but don't
Yeah.
like stay stuck in it because they're so insignificant.
You should
Again,
always.
it's about speeding up the combat, not about making it take longer. So don't make it last longer or make
Yeah.
it harder for yourself than it is.
Yeah, you should
and prepare
really.
before combat.
Yeah, of course. Well, preparing is most of the. Well, that speeds it up the most. But still,
Yeah.
I remember from the first few sessions I ran, just way in the past, that I had 10 skeletons on the board. I didn't know which skeleton was which. They changed positions all the time. I was just like, well.
Did you roll them all separately then?
No, I just had just the standard health, but after a while, one got hit, another one didn't. Someone died. Someone got.
But I feel like if you roll them all separately, you'd have the same problem with all the same with like every enemy being the same thing.
Hmm.
I don't think it would
If
really.
they're all the same miniature, that's kind of a problem.
At the end of the day, it's the same mistake, but you just take twice as long to set it up.
Yeah.
Well, twice is even an understatement. You'd probably take the amount of miniatures you just rolled for that amount of time longer than you should have.
Yeah, true. Which also brings me to a point. You should also try to keep the variety of monsters to the monster you want them to fight plus maybe 2 or 3 else. Because if you have 5, 6, 7, 10 varieties of monsters, you have 10 stat sheets open on your computer or in the monster manual, and it's just like, well, that type of monster just went. What am I going to do with it? You start looking it up, which is
the
not
amount
always...
of different types of stat blocks you're using.
Yeah, that.
My max for that, like the max amount of different stat blocks I can run without going insane in a single combat is about 5.
Yeah, I think 5.
That it's too many.
5 is about the limit.
Yeah. But then
3 would be more like okay. You could have like the main bad guy, one other stronger type, and then the cannon fodder.
Little dudes.
Well, for what I like to do for smaller things, for instance, a gnoll.
Mm-hmm.
If I want different versions of gnolls, I make like a one stat sheet into multiples and just have it laid out there. And then the miniature usually has the weapons that I have because I use pretty detailed miniatures.
Yeah.
So a certain gnoll with maybe a bow, I would give different weapons and different abilities to what a gnoll, maybe with a shield and with AC it also matters.
Yeah. Yeah,
little small adjustments you can make that can already make certain enemies different. That really don't require like an entire extra sheet. You can just put all that information on the same sheet.
Yeah, it depends on. Well, that works if you have the miniatures to back it up. If you don't, that gets a bit different. But then
you can make little little tokens.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Little tokens, or like you said, just mark them with something. If they're not even miniatures, then you can just put a mark on them or just put a paper down.
You can do even more stuff. If just a token, you can do whatever you want with a token. That's way more easily tracked than
miniatures.
I know miniatures they're just so fun, but a token you can just put a little circle with like a 1, a 2, a 3, and then you will never not know which is which. So
there's a problem with online combat. with Roll20 or something.
Well,
Yeah,
still, you could still do that with Roll20. It's less of
Well,
a
yeah,
problem.
but you wouldn't get the problem of like not knowing which enemy is taking what damage because you can scroll over and like see how much damage they
Yeah,
took.
they
and
have
stuff.
their own health
This is
bar. So.
yeah, like
I
this is
didn't
more of a problem of like real battle maps and actual
Yeah.
miniatures.
Which is the main concern with speeding up combat, because online it goes a lot quicker. With it depends. It really depends.
It's
If you
also
if you have scenes set up, then you can just well, yeah, never mind. We'll be repeating. So, talking about the monsters, how do you just in general, how do you play the monsters? Just like how do you play? What are in general good ideas while playing monsters? Who do you decide to attack? Things like that.
Well, look at their
boy.
intelligence. Have a bit of their lore. The most monsters have lore. Like what are they like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Know the monster. I think is a great start to pick that monster because they have really interesting abilities. How do they use them effectively, right?
Yeah.
So that's one way of doing it, I think.
Choosing who to attack, a very good one, is also like whatever hit it last. If it's still within range, attack that thing.
Yeah, I just mean you could do that. It could work all the time, but then it really depends. I think on who hit it and how much damage it did and how
really
intimidating the player looks. But
yeah,
it's a good rule of thumb.
That's a good rule of thumb in the like.
For just your starters, like stupid enemies, yes, that's probably just if a beast is attacked, he probably will attack the thing that's attacking him. Or he will go for the easiest target to get an easy meal. Something like that. Probably go for. But near your stages. But later on, I do think you really want to start thinking about what is their strategy. Like if there's a group, what are they going to do? Like when I was dealing with devils, I really had to think, what are these devils doing? Like what is their formation? What is their plan? Because they're devils. They are, and the ones they are that are in Avernus, they are literally military. So they have tactics. They know what they want to do. They don't just attack the one that's attacking them. They probably have a leader, and the leader is probably saying what they have to do consistently.
Yeah, that works with military. That works really well. I think also most depends on how and how intelligent the character is, but also if it knows a certain skill set. So like spellcasters or people who know wizardry, who can pick out how a wizard looks, kinda. They can logically, I think, assume that, well, maybe I want to kill the wizard first because he can be a bit annoying. So but I think you should really try to think about what the monsters are trying to accomplish, even with less intelligent monsters, like they're like kobolds or whatever, or even beasts. They're still trying to get food or something else. They're trying to get something from the players that the players are hindering in them in, or whatever.
Yeah, give the monster a purpose.
Yeah.
Is also
With beasts, it's a lot like, especially if they have low intelligence, people go rather quickly go like, why are they flanking? They're too stupid for that. But if you think about it, like wolves or something, like I know they have pack tactics. Like if you think about
Real
it
life
in
wolves. Wolves.
in real life, like hunting and the most straightforward combat is in any creature's instinct. So like any creature can really have tactics. Of course, the devil's tactics will be better than some random wolf pack. But like, if you're like, oh, it has an intelligence of 4, I can't play this fight tactically. That isn't always true. Even it was with like oozes, they have like an intelligence of 1. But even in their lore, it's like they go to whatever near source of heat there is because they recognize that as possible food. And even from that, you can base off of what what would be for them the easiest to go and attack, and the
Well,
first thing to go for.
probably
You can
the
also have
Pyromancer
fun
Mage.
with that. Like if the players make something like really hot, you could be like, oh, well, this guy's really stupid and now thinks there's something to eat
Mhm.
there. Maybe, just you can make weaknesses also via that. It's something to keep in mind. Because most of the time, weaknesses are fun too. Having something where the players discover, hey, I can do this to make it die quicker. Makes them feel cooler.
There are disappointingly low amount of vulnerabilities in general, though.
Yeah, true.
In normal
in-
monsters, yes. That's something you'd have to most of the time come up with yourself.
Yeah, it's a shame, but so while playing the monsters, how do you describe their actions, their reactions, and how do you keep it interesting enough that it isn't just the same attack and it isn't overly it isn't too much that it drains you too quickly? Because I've noticed that if I try to really act it out, then it is really draining. But if I try to tone it back a bit, then it can be a bit boring.
Yeah, I know that struggle. I think all of us know the struggle. Like you all have that combat encounter that was at the end of the session, and that really, I've had it. We all have probably had it. It's just the end of like when everyone is really tired, and then you want to get that combat encounter, and you notice everyone kind of want to quickens it up. You sometimes forget it, but at the other, it's so important also to keep the fight interesting.
Yeah.
So you need to find a balance, which is hard to find, especially in smaller encounters. It can be very hard. Like what, do I roar? Usually it's just acting out, like you said, the attack or the sound the monster makes, or even if the party member doesn't like describe how they killed them, because that's usually the stuff that keeps everyone engaged, which is probably one of the most important things. Is at least tell something you should probably never not do is not like if your player hits something, just say you did so much so damage, and then move on. No, probably want to at least explain, you heard it, right? You got it hit, and it screams out in pain. You at least want to have something in there. I think if you really just completely stop doing that, everyone probably will not have a good time.
No, of course, but I'm also talking about how do you decide which injury does which damage? Oh, of course, if someone shoots an arrow, you can just say,
Usually the dice do that.
Yeah, but
well, if the player says like I'm going to go for the eye, I'm like sure. That's way harder to hit though. So like it's either disadvantage on the attack roll or it has an incredibly high AC. And it doesn't necessarily mean, like if you say like okay, this creature has a 15 AC, you want to shoot out its eye, very well. The eye's AC is going to be like a 21 to hit, and if they hit 20, then they're like you should still hit the creature. You don't hit the eye.
Yeah, but
cold shots are also not really a thing that happen too often.
Yeah, no, it doesn't, and normally it's just like well, I want to shoot him, and then he shoots him, and then you have to think up. Well, he gets hit somewhere. Where does he get hit? How do I
damage, right?
Yeah, the only thing I put it on is like the damage. If you do like 1 point of damage, like oh you hit him in the foot. But if you do like max damage, it's like oh you might shoot it through the throat or whatever. Like it will hold up for like 3 more rounds before it would logically die, but before that time it's probably already killed.
It also depends on the monster's health, I think. Like if he's like super low, you'll know what you should do as a good DM. And again, this is something can really be draining, so we don't always do it. But what would be the most fun to do is if they have really low health and they get hit again, that they really like fall on their knees and barely can get up. Really to give the players like, yeah, he's pretty fucked up at this point. Probably at like the end of his like help pull here, you can probably kill him next turn if you do it right. just to give them little hints. You can also just tell them, "Oh, he's looking really bad."
Yeah,
but I think it's more fun if you explain it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you use the type of damage the player does on the creature to describe how well it's looking.
Yeah.
Oh, you can. Yeah. I usually have to think a bit before someone, if someone attacks it, I just have to think about it. Oh, it does this amount of damage, and then, like you said, it has this amount of life. It would be logical if it shoots him there. But what I'm also then thinking about, which I shouldn't do, and that's why I ask, not say what my experience is, because when I'm thinking about it, like, oh well, that arrow goes through his knee, or oh, he's looking really fucked up, and then I'm thinking, well, if his arrow goes going through his knee, then he probably wouldn't move, and then I just keep rambling in my head about that, and then forget about combat for a bit, and then snap back to reality.
About that though, sometimes you can be like, oh, you hit something vital, and then sort of play out as if he can't move because of that.
Yeah, but
there's no doing that. You can do that.
So, but most of the time when it's it usually it isn't that bad. But most of the time, if it comes up and I think about it, then it's usually at the start of combat where they're not damaged at all and they just got hit somewhere, and I'm just like,
just tell them, oh, it goes into his shoulder, and he's like,
the shoulder's always like right this spot where there's no vital organs, but it still sucks to be hit.
They also do it, right? They also do it. It's always, oh no, and then you just crack the bottom part and move on as if nothing happened. But it hurts, and you let your players know you hit it. But don't be like, oh, you hit him you hit him in the eye, and now he's blind, and then you just realize you still have fallen full down. I just made him blind.
That's the problem with improvising too much, and those going with the first thing that comes up in your head. You shouldn't always trust the first thing that comes up in your head.
Also, when you do this consistently, where you explain to your players how bad they look whenever they hit them, right?
Yeah.
You can make very scary enemies by saying you hit them and they barely react.
You
can, then your players know.
Oh shit, we're about to get fucked up.
Yeah, because if you think about it, like the hit points in general don't really make much sense. Because if you look at like, I don't know, 10th level character, they can take 60 stab wounds to the chest before they go down. Which like that doesn't really make.
That's
like,
quite impressive.
That's why saying like taking an arrow to the knee, you're fine, and not having to worry about, oh no, my enemy says like half movement. You don't really have to worry about what you describe, that the players will go like, oh, but that's like, you can just be like, guys, it's cinematic, I'm trying to help you guys imagine what's actually happening here. Another thing to circumvent this entirely is a video by Matt Koval. He talked about having hit points not necessarily be literal hit points, like literally being able to be hit and take the damage, but more like you have that many hit points, and that's the chances you have to evade an attack, where it's like, okay, you lose 10 hit points. It's like, if you didn't lose those 10 hit points, you would have gotten hit and you would have died. But because you lost those 10 hit points, you managed to just duck out of the way. Something like that. So that's also a way of describing. I've never seen anybody do it though. But that's a way of describing where you wouldn't have to worry about, oh, where are they going to hit? What kind of impact is this going to have story-wise?
Yeah.
Well, it's possible. A lot of people do. What works is say he hits you in a part and the armor just blocks it, but you notice it goes through your armor and it like damages your armor, and it does do like a little cut on your shoulder, but your armor managed to take most of it. That's probably a good way to also describe it. Like, you massively failed, but that armor you just got saves your life a little bit, and well, they lose hit points.
Yeah.
And if they fail, they always shoot through the cracks in the armor. That's what happens.
Yeah, you could do that. And you could also,
if they fail massively and get a lot of damage, maybe why not?
And you could also use the strategy of dodging, but you can't always make the enemy dodge, or because then, or was he talking about the players or the enemy about the hit points? Both.
Usually, enemies I think with enemies it usually makes more sense because they're really lowly enemies that are like, oh, you can probably smack that twice and it'll go down. They will actually be smacked twice and go down.
Yeah.
Bigger
Yeah,
enemies that actually are bulkier are like, yeah, that guy might actually be able to like take some pretty deep hits and still be managed to at least walk a few turns and then collapse. Right?
Yeah, but you can't make the enemy dodge all the time, because then it just and then and make his hit points go down, because then it just looks like no one hits. Even if they do hit, it just feels unsatisfying because it doesn't physically hit someone, and you don't hear him yelp out in pain. which
not necessarily, but it's like it's also, as I said, like I've never seen anybody do it, but it's a way to describe the use of hit points without having to think like this. We've stabbed this guy 30 times already. Why is he not dead yet? That's just a different way of describing it.
Yeah, well, if you stabbed it 30 times, it's not dead yet. You should probably say to them, well, guys, it's a demon. You're literally fighting a demon.
It has a really thick skin.
Into the abyss. I don't know how it works. You guys may be downed like 5 times and are standing up consistently. How does that work, right? It's a fantasy game at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You got shit we got shot with a ballista in the throat, but you got 1 hit point now, so you can keep on going.
Well, the ballista bolt is still stuck, but it works, I guess. So yeah,
much about that, I guess.
You can if you're going to use the dodge tactic, you should really first talk to your players about it and just
probably
before you decide to try it out, because if you try it out,
you can also try and be like, how did you think of that? And the player goes like, I hate it, then you just don't do it again.
Good, but I think with things like that, it just seems to me like it could be a problem. But yeah, well, talking about injuries and the death of the monsters, how do you decide then when the monsters retreat, if they do at all? Because sometimes they don't. But
what I normally use, it's mostly like guessing. But if the monster has so little hit points. If the monster has less hit points, then the average damage it's dealt within a turn, it will bounce, because it'll know that if I'm gonna stay here one more turn, I'm gonna fucking die.
Yeah.
It still means a lot of the time that players are able to either catch up to it or prevent it from going away. Normally, it would have to disengage, so it can't use its all like double movement. So that it also doesn't always mean that the creature will make it out. But like what I use for that is like if they know that they're going to go down if they stay around, they're gonna try and leave.
I think that's a good point. If I usually just wing it or forget about it, and then the monsters are dead. But how do you do that, Max?
Well, it first of all depends on the monster, but what I like the most is when you have a group that have a leader.
Mm-hmm.
If the leader goes down, the group is usually going to be like, that's not good, right?
Yeah.
And then so plan out what is the most important character. If there's a leader in a group or somebody who is a lead or whatever, if that leader loses his entire group, maybe the leader thinks like, all right, I'm out, or the other way around. If you take out the leader, the group may think we're gonna scatter.
Yeah.
You can even roll for that if you think I don't want to just do that. You can roll for it if they see the leader go down.
Use Warhammer tactics.
Yeah, like have them be like, we're gonna go out. It's a good thing to plan out, I think. For beasts, I would always say what Lucas just said. If they are not really winning and they're being surrounded, have them run away, because they're just beasts. They want to survive at the end of the day. They don't want to die.
No, of course.
But with groups, it's most interesting because you can plan that out. You can be like, you can set a DC to it. You can sort of create, like we said, the weakness. Like create your own weakness. That would be a weakness for a group. Stuff like that.
You could even make it into into a strength. That if their leader goes down, that they just go berserk, maybe fight to the last man, something like that. You could make it a mechanic. Yeah.
There could also be groups that do the complete opposite. Like, I don't get paid enough for it, and then just go.
Yeah, but that's as Max said. Like, that really depends on the creatures. Like, for example,
True.
goblins, they're gonna scatter the moment their leader falls because goblins are bitches, little pussies, and they'll run away. On the other hand, hobgoblins are very honor bound, very similar type creatures, but they're very honor bound. So if they run away, they're defeated in more way than one. So they might actually fight to the death. So as you said, like, it really depends on the creature you're fighting.
Yeah.
Again,
and their
read
lore.
some lore. Get you to
Lore,
know your,
yeah.
Know what you're dealing with, and know how they would react in certain scenarios.
So yeah, it's really interesting. I should read more lore.
Read some lore, watch some videos, read some more, watch more videos, and then maybe do an encounter with them.
Maybe, or just don't and just wing it. but so how do you decide, and how do you end an encounter that has dragged on too long? There are different ways to do it, of course. You could make enemies retreat, but that isn't always the case. So in that case, if you can't let the enemy retreat, but the combat starts to drag on and it isn't fun, and you also don't want to kill your players for no reason. Like they could beat it if they try to fight it, and otherwise the monster doesn't really want to or really care if they kill it or not. How do you end the combat?
Well, the things I've done, and I don't know if they're always good. One of them I know for a fact is not the greatest. But the thing that I say is probably if they are losing, letting the guys run away is a bad idea. Because, yeah, he maybe was a little imbalanced. Maybe you did something that wasn't, you didn't quite prepare yourself good enough for that. Or you just got your players into an area that you did plan out but didn't want your players to go to. Allow them to surrender.
Yeah.
Like, make it very clear you're now losing, and they are giving you an opportunity to lay down your weapon and stop. And if the players all want to stop, I would say they would lay down their weapons and surrender because they are tired. They probably want to end. They want to go on a different note. And yeah, they're prisoners, and that's probably bad, but an interesting encounter for next session, right?
Yeah.
I did that once. They didn't catch onto it. They didn't want to surrender. Also because at the moment the party I didn't think was very super tired yet and didn't want to quit. They wanted to move on. So I made a miracle happen and they ran out. And I also don't. And then you ask yourself the question. That's maybe something you guys have opinions on. When do you not do that and just wipe your players?
Yeah, that's a good question because
boy, actually party wiping? Never done it. I wouldn't know.
By that party, by almost every single one of them, you should have wiped us right there and then.
Oh, and I've told you multiple times, like, you should have just wiped us all.
A lot of the players do.
So to specify the moment that I was like, you should have wiped us, is we were as a party tracking someone down. We found this ruined city with thousands of dead bodies there, and we continued on. We were like, yeah, this is probably where we're supposed to go.
This will be fine.
Random-ass underground tunnel. We went there and we found this massive stone door, which we couldn't possibly go through. There were no levers, no buttons, no nothing. And we were like, okay, we're all going to put athletics checks. We can, I guess, levitate on this thing. We're gonna lift it off the ground, and we got it a little bit, and then we saw the gnolls on the other side saw us, and they decided to open up the door. We were like, yeah, this is a great idea. We continued on. The fight was too difficult, and my character got disintegrated. So like, also I wouldn't have been like, oh, you could have killed my character because you already did. But it was really like, we knew for a fact there were all the signs that showed us that we shouldn't have gone there. So you would have had every right to kill us all.
Yeah.
But at the moment, you don't want to
realize it later. Even if we only realized later, oh, that probably wasn't that smart. It still would have been fine. If the players know or could have known that they're walking into something that's too dangerous, and they're not giving up, you can, in my opinion, go ahead and wipe them. If it's like, we're gonna fight this pit fiend at level 5, and they're like, yeah, let's go, and they're gonna do it, and the pit fiend kills them all. It's like, that's awfully obvious, guys. What the hell?
Well, if I can give some advice about that, looking back on that moment now, my players, a few of them were pretty aggressive with the door. I genuinely didn't want to open that door. I was like, this is not going to open. This doesn't work. My players were getting aggressive towards me. They were like, what is this stupid door? Why is it here? It doesn't open. And I thought by myself, that is a good point. There is no point to this door because I don't want you to enter this. What I should have done is have an enemy come somewhere, aggro the group, and walk out of there. That's what I should have done. But I gave in to my players, and I was like, you're right. I should open this door. And I did. And that wasn't a good idea.
Because in the end, it kind of felt like a cheap way out, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, exactly. I opened the door for them, which was obviously not done by themselves. That was done by the gnolls. They went in there, and it only made sense to me. They were just going to close that door behind them. And then I thought, but it's not openable. So I didn't do that. I didn't prepare that well. Like, sure, that's what the gnolls would have done. That would make sense. But it's not fun. That's sort of my mindset there, I think. It's like, probably want to sometimes take logic away and be like, just have like a stupid wandering gnoll who's like with his basket, I'm back, and then just see the guys at the door and just nope, and just run away. They'll follow.
Well, making that mistake, you could have also said like, oh, on the inside you do find a lever or something, or like it was hidden before and you couldn't have seen it.
Could also done that.
Or even if you wiped the party, you could have been like later like, oh, this undead thing resurrected you all. It really depends on what you're fighting. If you're fighting as least as possible, if you're just fighting one, that's never going to happen.
Get you guys to surrender. That was I very desperately wanted the party to surrender. But
if you want the party to surrender, you should have an enemy saying surrender now or die.
Well, that was happening.
And they know what choice they're making.
Literally happening.
He did.
He did. I don't know. I was dead. I was playing the enemy at that point. I'm pretty sure I was playing the boulder.
Yeah, you were playing the boulder.
There was a very booming voice consistently telling everyone to put down their weapons.
Yeah, there was.
Yeah, no. Then you're in all the right to kill the party.
And we talked about it.
Just killed the party. I should have just killed the party.
We talked about it because I was in the party. And I was the one who cast Levitate on the door because I thought, oh wait, I got a spell for this. It could work, but you said we could surrender, but we basically had put it to two options: either we surrender or we just get killed. There were the two options that we thought of, and then we chose to basically try to fight it and get killed. So, I mean, you had all right.
The choice was actively made.
Yeah, was actively made.
I didn't act on it. I simply didn't act on it. I didn't want to wipe my party then and there.
Of course.
But of course you wouldn't.
In hindsight.
So like making the choice as a DM, like as a DM, making the choice like, okay, we're going to continue, and most likely knowing the stats of these creatures, knowing what state the PCs are in, being like, okay, as a DM, you know what you're doing, and you can see, I'm going to kill my party now. Making that decision, especially if you've been running, like if it's the first session of a campaign, it's like, funny, that was the first session you got TPK'd. But if the players got at least somewhat attached to their characters and you wipe them, and you as a DM, I don't see a moment happening where like, oh shit, didn't see that coming. No. As a DM, you see it coming, especially if you kill one or two players already. Making a choice is super difficult. And if you make the wrong call, and if you kill all your players, and they don't agree in the end, like we do now with you, like to make that choice or to be okay with you TPKing the party. If the players don't realize we made a stupid mistake and we died for it, then you can have a lot of out of game problems. So like that, it's a really tough decision.
I know, but I don't have that. I can't say that because there were players on the table looking straight in my eyes, and they said, "Do it."
Okay, you're completely in the wrong. You should have killed us all. But in general, it's a very hard decision.
I mean, it's still, if players are saying hard. Do it, it's still hard because you don't want to consciously kill all the players, especially with that group, because there were seven people, right?
Something there were 7 people.
Yeah, well, 7 people you would have TPK'd right there and then, and well,
I mean, there was the honest people who just looked at me and said, "Do it." Like, we've done this to ourselves. We're here now. We went. I mean, I think when it all went wrong was when everyone got in the room. One of the players who was a rogue. I'll say rogue because it was a minotaur with mostly strength.
Rogue.
When the barbarian walked into the room.
Mostly a barbarian, but a rogue. But not a barbarian, but mostly a barbarian. It was fake.
Some rogue, yeah.
Yeah.
A rogue with barbarian stats.
And I knew for a fact he's not good at sneaking. And I also knew for a fact he sneaked straight into like just a... It was a war camp, essentially.
Yeah.
It was a huge... There were a lot of gnolls there, and they came all out of the tent. And that's when I think everyone realized...
We fucked up,
This is not good.
Did he take like 15 attacks just on himself?
Something like that.
It was really bad.
There were no... First there were no gnolls, and then suddenly there were 20 plus gnolls or something like that. And more in the tents. And... After we killed about half of them, because we eventually killed most of the gnolls, there came a zombie beholder from the roof, who was probably there the whole time. Yeah,
there were things in there. The thing is, if there was a rogue who could actually decently and stealth pretty good, he could have found like the way to open the gates, and I would have. But we didn't have that. We didn't have a good rogue. We didn't have somebody who was sneaky or was able to get past everyone.
Yeah, jumping off from that, because that's a wonderful topic. How do you deal with the unfortunate events like that? Like even if you could have killed.
Show it.
Sorry.
You cheer on the inside, but you don't show it.
I don't know.
You're like, success.
I killed my first party. No.
It's a milestone.
How do you deal with player death? Because even if you, well, you didn't TPK the party, but you still kill the player.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you deal with that? Well,
I mean, it depends. It's the deaths that I didn't see coming. Or I didn't like. They were very like. One of them was very sudden. Actually, two of them I didn't.
By the way, before we answer that, we got a question in the chat. Mm-hmm. Do we feel a DM should step in if a problem happened that makes one player uncomfortable? Jesus, uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, always. If you notice that the player's being uncomfortable, always step in. Yeah. Because as a DM, you have the authority at the table. If you don't, kind of a problem there. But the fact, especially you're sitting behind the DM screen, you're running all the things here, you have some kind of authority. If you think you don't, you're wrong.
You should have some authority at least.
And if you as the DM are the thing that is happening wrong, and you're watching another player being harassed by the DM, step in as a player. You can attempt to talk up to your DM, especially if the player didn't have that problem. The player will say something, but if you're like, I think they're very uncomfortable, you can definitely mention it. But as a DM, you should always step in.
Yeah, which is why session 0 is very important. Yeah. So
session 0 is really important for that. But still,
sort of know what people want and don't want, and you should step in if there's still players doing it. But if you notice it hasn't been It depends. It's hard if you don't know if the player is uncomfortable. But if, like I said, if it's set in session 0 and people are still doing it,
Yeah, you can always bring it up. Like you can always bring it up even if you're a player, but also if the DM doesn't act, yeah, that's a problem.
If the DM doesn't do anything and you're the one being uncomfortable, like walk away from the table, get up from the table, walk away.
Yeah, that's probably the best.
Either mention it or just walk away.
I'd say mentioning it is probably the most mature thing to do.
Well, yeah,
but still, walking away is not bad. You can always just, if you're not comfortable or if someone else is not comfortable, you can just tell them, "Hey, come, we'll step out." Well,
at least always talk about it afterwards, I would say.
Player that asked our only female player out, she turned him down, so this dude started roping her character. Why are you now banned from Adventure League? If you handled it, that sounds like that's large. Yeah.
Well, that's a big difference with
big
Adventures
yikes.
League and being able to play. Adventures League is like this professional D&D thing where it's like they're DMs that work there. That's different with a home game which is what we all do. It's very different. What I've had in one home game before though is I had these twins, right? They were these chaotic neutral characters. And they were digging into this character that was that made it obvious. Like, I want to play him as like sexually confused, not knowing what he wants. And one of these twins really started getting onto him, and I was like, he was like playing it off as being like awkward and stuff, and it was funny in the group. And it kept going, and at one point the other twin got involved, and it looked to the moment where it's like I closed the door, and I was like, nope, that's not going to happen. The person walks out. You guys don't have sex with them. That's this thing that if you as a DM don't step into that and you don't do that, as happened with at your table, if the DM doesn't step in, if that ends up you getting banned from that game, don't feel bad about it. You're better off that way. And if the other player was in agreement with you, just give that player a call. Look up for a home group to play with rather than playing in the Adventures League. If the DMs there aren't good enough, look for your own DM. There are many of them online that offer free games, or try to run one yourself and show up that you're able to do it better than they are. Because if something like that happens and the DM doesn't step in, you're better off not playing there.
Yeah, but and even you handled it in game because you killed his character while he was harassing the other character. It's characters can kill each other. It's an adventure. I'm not really familiar with Adventures League, but still, it shouldn't result in you being banned. Yeah.
Well, you should. I don't know if you did, but you should have addressed it first out of game before you killed it.
Yeah, of course.
Soft spot for many people.
You should first notify the DM, and he should act. The DM should act. That's part of the DM's job. If someone's not comfortable, and the DM should then make it comfortable for the players, because everyone should have fun. That's the bottom line of playing D&D. Well, yeah, that's. And if he said nothing, then, well, he's not that good of a DM, or he. Well, I don't know. He should really have acted. But continuing on our topic, because it involves the death of a player. We can the death of a player character, I should say. Mm-hmm. How do you handle such things? Player death, or player death, lasting diseases, lost limbs, certain things like that. You've had both. You've had multiple things happen, Max. I noticed for a fact. You've had a lost limb, and
yeah, I did. I did the lost limb thing because I sort of
Yeah, explain
I
that.
noticed the player, and I didn't want to like. I wanted to sort of like have a consequence to his actions because the player was doing things where the other player like that's not smart, and it
You
wasn't
punched the
smart.
guard, right?
Harassing guards,
Yeah.
just
What was
not.
already established, we were considered terrorists in that country.
Yeah, you didn't have a good relationship with people, so
He
that
started
happened the way it did.
he started physically attacking the guards, but
Yeah.
yeah. How would you have, because the game ended shortly after? But how would you have dealt with it if the game had continued on?
I would have let him had like probably a game or two had him like a bit of disadvantage with reminding him you don't have that arm, and then I would slowly start introducing um, like ways to solve it. I think like
The possibility for generation. Well, losing an arm wouldn't necessarily be that bad. Like you can't hold spears with two hands. You can't
There's a
carry
lot of
things with two hands. Like
consequences.
it's not necessarily that bad. But even with that, you could say like, oh, well, my character always used like this great sword, and I'm not able to wield it anymore. Either you can say like that's a problem you have to deal with, like switch to a one-handed weapon, perhaps, or you can be like, well, go ahead and invest some money, so you can still wield this thing with two hands, but you have like a hook or whatever. You can be like you can replace the arm with a simple prosthetic and have it work functionally in the way you normally do it. But for example, like you would be able to wield your sword. Climbing is still going to be a bitch, though. Um, like whatever happens to a player for them to lose a limb, they deserve it in some way. Should introduce them to the idea of getting it back,
Hmm.
or
we
give them prosthetics of ways of solving it. Um,
I do not condone just randomly cutting limbs off during
no,
combat.
don't do that.
No.
Don't.
Have it be a consequence of something stupid they do, which clearly is not supposed to be done. It's just a way for me at that time, like saying, stop doing that because you're starting to turn into a murder hobo if you're going to continue this behavior. And the world and the players do not agree with that.
Well, it seems we went a bit over time. We still have a lot of talk to talk about, considering combat. We already touched on the disagreements and such, but we will continue this combat saga. Well, in the next few sessions. But would any of you like to plug your well, not all rogues are murder hobos. Mostly they just steal. But would any of you want to plug something?
Well, the old Instagrams, Behold Max. That's about it.
He paints
In my
miniatures.
case, it's still this Twitch channel. We're streaming twice a week now for the game, and then we got the podcast every Wednesday. So there's more and more stuff coming to here. So
Yep.
don't forget to follow this.
And even more stuff, maybe in the future. We'll have to see when and how. And for me, also follow this podcast. Follow us on YouTube as well. We might have a Twitter. I don't know. I know we have some things in the description below, but that's well, we'll see about that. Follow me personally on my Instagram. On RJ Jansen 1. I don't really post on there, but I want to.
Oh, still.
There's stuff coming, because my music, my album is coming out next month, probably. So look out for that. Listen to my music on Spotify with the name Rick Jacko Jansen. And well, I think that's it, most likely. So thank you so much for coming out tonight. We'll be back next Wednesday from 3 till 4 p.m. EDT, continuing the combat saga. Take care, have a nice day, and remember, keep having fun.
Goodbye.
Bye.